All right. And after country comes out all the people that make the Agribusiness and Countryside Development Foundation possible, to all of our special partner institutions, senior special partner institutions, corporate members, and individual members, all of whom whose generosity makes it possible for us to bring you our sessions and do our work for poverty alleviation in the Philippines through job creation. The Agribusiness and Countryside Development Foundation is in partnership with the Management Association of the Philippines. We are a nonprofit member supported organization. And as I've mentioned, it is only through your generosity we're able to bring you our sessions every 2 weeks, as well as any special activities that we have moving forward. So if you're joining us today, this morning, through our Zoom, welcome, good morning. It's nice to see everybody bright and early. If you are joining us 2 weeks later through our social media uploads from wherever in the world you are, we're very glad to see you again. And we hope you enjoy today's session. Today's session is about sustainable fishing. If you are involved in sustainable fishing practices, you are a member of the aquaculture, you're a stakeholder in the aquaculture industry, you are working with scientific institutions or academic institutions on the topic of research and development in sustainable fishing and aquaculture, let us know what you think of today's session. You can leave a comment below. Tell us about your story. Tell us about what you do, or ask any questions that you might have about sustainable aquaculture and sustainable fishing. We'd be very happy to hear from you, and we hope that you'll leave a comment down below for us. All right. So, without further ado, I'd like to ask our chair, Mr. Ernie Ordonez, to please introduce today's speaker. Ernie, are you there?
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. I read the background of our speaker. Not only is she a wife of your relative, but she has one heck of a background. So let me briefly talk about it. She's, of course, a marine biologist and a licensed veterinarian. She's into sustainable development. She's done surveys. She's a marine ecologist for corals, reefs, etc. But what's interesting about her is she's gone into three areas of fantastic background. The three areas are very important to us. One is academia. After her stint in Los Baños, she was 2 years doing research with La Salle University, academia. The next one that's important for us is LGUs. Today we have to deal with LGUs because they are the ones in charge of agriculture and aquaculture. And just 2 years with them also full time in Negros Occidental, where she's from. And finally, she is globally recognized. She has contracts upon contracts of a very good international firm called the GTZ. I work with them a lot. They have very high standards. And the fact that she gets contracts after contracts means they really like her. So actually, you said if you're in aquaculture or or municipal fishing or commercial fishing, it should be interesting because you're going to talk about sustainability. And this is a challenge right now where our seas are severely depleted. But if you're none of those, still pay close attention because there's a lot of idle money around and there's money in this and it's not been really tapped. But of course, in making the money, we take care of the environment. And that's what's good about Ari. She has both the environment and the business side for sustainability. So it's my pleasure to welcome Ari. Ari, just to let you know, we have three requests, right? Because our departed chair, Ramon Lizarra, said, we're not here just to give information. We're here, as Julius reminds us all the time, to alleviate poverty. How do you do that? By getting the technology from these forums and applying it. And therefore, three things. Number one, please give us your contact number, office or cell phone, whichever. Because, before Julius came in, we had like 32 people. Now we have 1,400 plus globally. Julius and his dynamic team have brought that in. So please give us your number so we can call directly without going through the bureaucracy of calling us. Second, when you talk, please keep in mind that we want to, do what we can to help spread the good work you're doing. And that could be having people get money from banks or town government institutes and all that, because we have connections now, and we can talk to government officials quite easily. And third, quite importantly, please spend 5 to 10 minutes. This is very important. It's the personal connection. So instead of just giving us a lecture, give us 5 to 10 minutes about your life. What brought you into this area and why are you into it? Because when we talk to you personally, we get a feeling of where you're coming from, and we get to know you more. And actually, as you knows, we try to keep in contact with our speakers, and often the speakers and we have joint initiatives, which we won't discuss here, but that's our objective, to do something after the seminar, to do poverty alleviation through technology transfer. All right, so on that note, Ari, if possible, 5 to 10 minutes. How did you get into this? What drives you on it? And as you talk, at the end or in the mean or during the talk, you tell us how we can help you spread your word. Okay, I just got lost. All right. Anyway, I think I got stopped, but I guess you got the most of it, right? So Ari, we welcome you and we look forward to your talk. And thank you very much for honoring us by coming and sharing your knowledge. Thank you.
Julius, can I go ahead or?
Please go ahead. Yes, we got it.
Yes,
Oh,
please
okay.
go
That's
ahead.
good up
Go
here.
ahead.
Please
Okay.
go ahead. Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you very much, Ernie, for your very kind words. I have never heard my CV interpreted so nicely before. Thank you so much for that. I think I'll go straight to the introduction of myself for the 5 minutes. So I'm Ari Barcelona. I'm actually married to Julius's first cousin. We're based here in Negros. Julius's roots are actually here in Negros Occidental, in Bacolod and in Escalante City. Um, as mentioned in my introduction, I graduated from UP Los Baños. I first took marine zoology, and then having been immersed in the marine environment, I had a keen sense of wanting to work on marine mammals. So ang layo, no? Pato, napadpad dito sa forum niyo ngayon. Having worked for a year at the UP Marine Science Institute, my boss asked me, "So what do you want to do? The project is ending." So I said, "I'd like to take up work on marine mammals." He said, "All the people I know are working on marine mammals are vets." So I took another 4 years to take veterinary medicine. So I passed the board, but I can't call myself a doctor because I haven't practiced since then. The only animals that I practice on
Yeah.
are my dogs and maybe once in a while when some dolphins or whales get stranded on shore and I assist. We have a local group. We actually belong to a national network where we volunteer to assist in the rescue or rehabilitation of stranded marine mammals. But having done that, my first real work was with the World Wildlife Fund or WWF, and I was able to work on marine mammals there. And the work evolved from getting involved with marine mammal work. I was exposed to general coastal resource management work. That's why I'd like to use that as my anchor for my talk today. And then with the progression of my work, I got involved with GTZ, which is now GIZ, German International Development or Cooperation for Development. And although we worked heavily at the start on coastal resource management, na-engage din po kami with the LGUs on, towards the end of our 7-year program, we worked on enhancing what we now know as what we used to know as the Comprehensive Land Use Plan to become the Comprehensive Land and Water Use Plan. So tumulong po ako sa pag-integrate ng coastal area in local development planning. So after that, I got engaged. I was asked to join the Fish Right program, which I now represent in this talk. And marami po na ginagawa namin ay fisheries centered. So I heard from Julius that sorry, ang dami nagpa-pop up sa laptop ka. Okay. So, sinabi ni Julius before that your previous speakers spoke about aquaculture. So that's more like the farming side of the fishery sector. I am here now to talk about capture fisheries or ang last of the hunting activities na ginagawa po on a large scale. No, actually, fishing, capture fisheries is the last of our hunting activities because we catch animals from the wild, mostly our fish and some invertebrates, etc. So I'm very happy to have been invited to this talk. I'm very happy to hear that this group wants first and foremost to help. That's why you're learning so much, and that's why I very much, with the blessing of my boss, take this opportunity to share what we're doing and uh, inform you on how you can help, on what different parts of our work you can help. Um, I am married. I have 3 children. One just graduated from law. She just took the bar exam this year. My 2 other children are with me now here in Bacolod. One is 15 years old. She's visually impaired but can play the piano, classical piano. And the other one, my little boy, is turning 11 on November 10, and he loves dinosaurs and just joined us spelling bee. So I hope that's as personal as I can get. So I think I can go on to my talk. So it's nice seeing you all. I'm looking forward to the chat later on in the remaining hour of our forum. Okay. So can I move on to my presentation? Okay na po? O baka po may tanong po kayo?
No, please go ahead. We'll reserve our
Okay.
questions for the Q&A. Yeah.
Okay. Can I share my screen?
Should be good. Let's check.
Well, actually, I
All
can.
right.
I already am. Okay, let me just minimize this box. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, we're good.
Yes.
Sige, go ahead.
Okay, great. Okay, so I mentioned, no, I'll be talking a lot about fisheries, but I use an acronym here, which is very much widely used. And these 3 letters are now changing into different other acronyms, and I'll explain to you why using the program that I am engaged with now as the center of my discussion. So trends in CRM work, what we do at the Fish Right program, and how we got here. So you'll see a lot of logos. You see a lot of logos actually on the screen. Fishright is primarily implemented by the University of Rhode Island. They had to open a Philippines branch office here in the Philippines to operate. Our funds come from the USAID, and our main implementing partner, it's a government-to-government engagement. So the Philippine government representative is the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources under the Department of Agriculture. We work in Fish Right with 6 other groups. One is Path Foundation Philippines Incorporated. They're very well known for reproductive health and coastal resource management, and a lot of their work has been done in Northern Palawan. We work with Silliman University. I'm quite sure all of you are familiar with Silliman, based in Dumaguete. They also have a lot of coastal and fisheries work ongoing, aside from a lot of other aspects of their institution. No? We also work with the Marine Ecological Resources Foundation. That's a foundation arm of the UP Marine Science Institute. So they're also heavy on science, no science work, and how to translate that into um, helping communities and fisher folk and other groups. We also worked with the NGOs for Fisheries Reform, NFR. It's a group of NGOs that got together when RA, Republic Act 10654, or the amended Fisheries Code, was analyzed for some revisions back in, I think that was 2015 or 2014. So we've worked also with them. They are our community organizers on the ground in the implementation of Fish Right. We also worked with two international NGOs. One is Resonance. They work on partnerships for livelihood. And the second is Sustainable Fisheries Partnership, which evolved here in the Philippines into Bluer Seas, Philippines. You'll hear more about them later on in the work that I'd like to highlight, and where you, as private sector members, will come in very helpful in pushing the work we do beyond the life of our program. Okay. So my outline is just to, quickly level off on what is coastal resource management and how it's evolving into what we now use in fish right and what the Bureau of Fisheries uses as the ecosystem approach to fisheries management. So how do we roll this out in the Philippines, and what do we do at the Fish Right program? And lastly, how you can help. Okay, so it's a very short outline, but I have 54 slides, so I'm just going to breeze through them, not make them so heavy. I'm breezing through some of them because they're quite technical and I can't explain everything in depth, but I just like to show you some things. Okay, so this is the Philippines, the country we know and love. We all know it's composed of around 7,100 islands, with an approximate coastline of 36,289 kilometers. So it's quite long. It has one of the longest shorelines in the world. Uh, and because of that, a lot of our population resides, almost 60% reside along the coastal area. So a lot of people rely on the coastal resources for their food, for their income, and really for their survival. And about 70% of the total municipalities and cities are located along these areas as well. So a lot of management has to be done, a lot of working together is entailed in managing our coastal resources. So what is coastal resource management? It actually, I think, started way back in the 1960s to the 1970s. For the older people in this audience, no, I'm sure you've heard of or have come across people coming from the US Peace Corps. So they are also part of the USAID arm, or the group that assists developing countries. And so they started this whole CRM movement in the Philippines. Way back then, we had an abundance of resources, but we were already being cautioned that we had to start managing them well if we wanted our resources to last. So CRM is basically the process of planning, implementing, and monitoring, just like any other project or program that you have. But it pays special attention to the beneficial uses of our coastal resources, and it espouses participation, collective action, and sound decision making. So a lot of CRM elements are still found in the different approaches that have evolved into the approaches today. And a lot still of those activities are set out to achieve sustainable use and management. There are elements of economics and ecology, and valuing resources in the coastal areas. And it considers interactions among and within the resource system and the users and the environment in which both coexist. So a lot of CRM work is about managing people and the activities of humans that may affect the coastal areas and coastal resources so that they are minimized. Okay. So what's in an acronym? I've been working in the development work for more than 20 years already, and you usually come across a lot of letters. Um, and I'm sure more so in the private sector, no? But over the years, you've heard words like CRM, and there's CFRM and ICM, and now I'm talking about EAFM for the most of my talk. But CRM, I'd just like to share with you the differences among these different approaches based on the focus or the paradigm, the nature of governance, and the type of stakeholders that you deal with. For CRM, which is like the primordial form of coastal resource management, it's very much sector based. So it focuses on the people and the resources. It is most often top down because you have a lot of the governance doing the work, but it sometimes encourages participation. And then over the years, you've seen a growing role of environmental NGOs sort of assisting or supporting or even taking on the role of governments. And then for the stakeholders, it's pretty broad, but mostly you deal with the resource users, the fishers, the gleaners, the people who go out into the waters or the coastal zones and utilize resources. Now, CFRM, this is under GIZ programs. It's called Coastal and Fisheries Resources Management. So this is ecosystem based. It tried to be holistic, focusing both on habitat and the ecosystem. The governance was highly variable, although we tried to establish, working through the hierarchy of governance from the region to the province to the local government and down even to the barangay level. So it was strongly influenced by environmental lobbies, but was found to be more participative. And then the stakeholders were a bit narrow because there was a fisheries focus in CFRM. So essentially, the stakeholders were fishers or people associated in fisheries. And it progressively opened to other interests. So as I mentioned, we looked into CLWUP formulation under this framework. Then, of course, you have ICM or Integrated Coastal Management. This is more the push of agencies like DNR. So it's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit hindi naman awkward, pero you see the nuances where DNR has a different approach from BFAR because of the focus of their work. Now, DNR is more environment, protection of the environment, where BFAR is more food production, no? But there are some overlaps and some differences. ICM is area-based, and it focuses on the economic benefits of the managed resources. It's also most often top-down. Again, there's a growing role of environmental NGOs, and it's much broader because it's an integrated approach. So it's society-wide, and you often find support from even recreational and small-scale fishers. So ICM was more like it sealed the deal for the integration of the coastal areas into land use planning. So ito po yung laganap ngayon pag nag-update po ang mga LGUs ng kanilang comprehensive land and water use plans. Now, lastly, EAFM, which got approved sometime, I think, in 2016 through a fisheries administrative order. EAFM is, again, ecosystem approach to fisheries management. It's a systems and decision-making process. We like to say that the governance is like, it uses the bibingka approach. Di ba ang bibingka po niluluto sa ilalim tsaka sa taas? So there's a meeting halfway of the different forms of governance from the national level and from the even barangay or community level, as small as an organized fisher folk association. They meet halfway in governing the resources, the fisheries resources, which results in a framework which balances ecology and human well-being, ecological health and human well-being. The stakeholders are diverse. We started the Fish Right program together with BIFAR, speaking mostly to government and to national government agencies and the local government. And then we started folding into the conversations, into our activities, ang mga people's organizations, empowered fisher folk that weren't empowered yet, but we helped them get organized, and even the academe, because a lot of EAFM work is very much pinag-uusapan. So I'd like to talk very quickly about the Fish Right. Fish Right actually has built on more than 30 years of Philippine-US partnership for marine biodiversity. USAID has been in the Philippines since way back in, I don't know, maybe the 1980s. There are 7 organizations, which I mentioned earlier, that work together with the national and local governments and communities. We have a budget of around 25 million US dollars. We were granted an additional budget sometime in 2022, I think. And we started with 3 sites. First, the first 2 sites were the Calamianes Islands Group in Palawan, northern Palawan. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but I'm making a circle around the northern area of Palawan, which has a circle. The second site was the Visayan Sea, where I am assigned. I'm actually the Visayan Sea coordinator, which later I became the FMA 11 coordinator. I'll explain that later on. And then the Southern Negros Marine Key Biodiversity Area. At around 2021, I think, we expanded to the West Philippine Sea area. So we have 3+1 sites. And the newest is, of course, the West Philippine Seascape. And our emphasis there in that new expanded area is scaling and sustainability of what we've started in the first 3 sites. So we have a program problem and goal. Of course, you can't start a program if you don't have something to solve or work on. The problem that we are addressing right now is the declining catch and inadequate livelihood, illegal fishing, and too many fishers in our seas. So our goal is to increase biomass. So it's either the size of the fish or the number of fish by 10%, more than what we started in 2018. To enhance ecosystem services. So the services that are given, that are rendered by our ecosystems, like the air we breathe, the clean water we drink, the medicine we get from our natural resources, etc. And of course, human well-being. So our approach in achieving our goal is reducing threats through improved management. And we have several facets of that improved management, or the tools we use to improve management. And these are the ones that I will be talking about in my talk. So our approach, very quickly, we engage fisheries managers, fishers, and fishery scientists. We bring them together. This took like 3 years of our program to agree on an approach to meet that goal of increasing fish biomass and reducing threats. Agree on a plan, implement that plan, and comply with regulations that come out of that plan. So this is our line of thinking. In USAID speak, it's called the theory of change, no? If you get to do this, if stakeholders agree, then they will implement. If they implement, of course, they will comply. And if they comply, we have reduction of overfishing, reduction of illegal fishing, and reduction of habitat degradation. So you come out with these 2 outcomes, no? Food security, these 2 boxes pala of outcomes: food security, income, livelihood, healthy and resilient communities, ultimately. Because, the human well-being is the ultimate box, because I always remember one of my bosses told me when I was working with WWF that conservation is all about humans anyway. We want to conserve because we want to leave resources for us and for our future generations. Okay, so what do we do at FishRight? First, we focused on operationalizing ecosystem approach to fisheries management through what we call fisheries management areas. So fisheries management area is any body of water which may be delineated for fishery resource management purpose. This was not pulled out of thin air. It was actually based on a fisheries administrative order 263, which is called for the establishment of FMAs for the conservation and management of fisheries in Philippine waters. So if you look at the map, the Philippine waters was divided into 12 fisheries management areas. So Manila belongs actually to FMA 6, which faces the West Philippine Sea. And then I work here at the FMA 11, which Visayan Sea is part of. So the establishment was based on scientific findings on stock boundaries, the limits of stocks like galunggong, sardines, herrings, mackerels. These were all studied, and the waters were delineated based on these, their range and distribution and their structure, as well as in consideration of administrative divisions and in consultation with stakeholders. So the FMAs were established uh, to provide to better manage our fishery stocks, no? And it was based on EAFN and anchored on food security and supplementary livelihood for poverty alleviation. So I'm very happy to hear, based on the background that Julius and Erdy provided earlier this morning, that really your focus in coming up with this forum is really poverty alleviation and helping the agriculture and aquaculture and hopefully capture fisheries sectors. Okay, so okay. So part of our operationalizing the EAFM, we heavily supported the Bureau of Fisheries. No? We capacitated them in establishing management bodies. This was all the part of the setup of FMAs. So each of those 12 FMAs that you saw on the map earlier has a management board, a science advisory group, and a technical working group. And working at the very heart of those, just like other big organizations, they have a secretariat, that operates and moves all these bodies along. Okay, so we capacitate them, and we even help out in their roles as the different management bodies. So what roles are these? So this is basically how an FMA operates. You have science providers, National Stock Assessment Program. So they churn out the numbers as a basis for what fisheries people call reference points, harvest control rules, and harvest control measures. So these are parameters by which management of our fishery stocks are based. So they deliberate on this. The science providers provide a technical report to the science advisory group. They deliberate on this together with the technical working group and then present a draft policy brief to the management board. And then the management board deliberates, poses questions to the science providers or the technical working group. How did you come up with this science? What is the alternative to this option? How are you going to implement it on the ground? So on and so forth. And so they make a resolution and provide a policy by which the technical working group of the FMA will then implement or roll out the harvest control measures that were identified. And in the form of a policy, such as a fisheries administrative order through BFAR or through an ordinance with the LGU, the management board is able to provide policy recommendation and other forms of governance so that these rules that were arrived at through science can be implemented. Okay, so what does that science look like? These are just some slides that I pulled out from FMA 6, which forms part of the the West Philippine Sea. So these are numbers that have been produced from the science arm of BFAR Region 3. Their focus right now is the galunggong, and an example of the indicators that they use for fisheries management, they look at fishing mortality, percent of mature fish caught versus percent of immature fish, what's the optimum fish catch, where are the mega spawners, etc. No? So these are mga highly technical fisheries parameters. And they also have, like a stoplight. They know, based on the data, when to start regulating the fisheries, when it's still okay to continue with the same number of fishers in the waters, etc. And so with those science basis, they're able to come up with what we call harvest control measures. So these measures are like, there's a total ban on the use of fine mesh gears. You are only allowed a certain number of ring net users in this specific fishing ground. There is a seasonal closure of fishing in the Visayan Sea area from November to February based on these findings. So these are things that are science-based, and this is what we popularize for our fisher folks. Of course, we come up with the science, we simplify the terms, and we consult the fisher folk and let inform them that this is the management measure that will be taken, and how can we help you once these measures are in place. So a lot of the livelihood talks are also done when you negotiate for a harvest control measure, negotiate and finalize. So these are some examples no, of management actions that are being proposed right now in FMA 6. So that's actually Zambales area, Pangasinan area, all the way up to Ilocos, and then all the way down to the upper half of Mindoro. So that's FMA 6. So these are the management actions that are being proposed to the management body at the moment. Okay. So what else do we do aside from rolling out EAFM through FMAs? We have participatory ecosystem modeling towards science-informed decision-making and fisheries management, or what we just call right sizing. Okay, so this is a lot of going back and forth with fishers, knowing how many fishers fish, what are the gears being used, what are the fish being caught, how often do you go out. So it's a lot of data gathering. And then right sizing entails a lot of scenario building. So it makes the use of eco modeling to come up with different scenarios to help fishers and fisheries managers decide on what the best management option would be. So we've done this sort of right sizing with fishers in Pilar Bay in Capiz, in Coron area in Palawan, in Acid Gulf in Masbate. And the beauty of right sizing is the fishers feel very much engaged and they feel very much a part of the policy formulating process, that they're very agreeable to what is decided on. And they form like a coalition against illegal fishing once they know that they're being heard. So right sizing, we found, has become a very effective tool in managing even the smallest of fishery units, like in Busuanga, in Palawan. It was in Linapacan that Basnig fishers agreed on their own to a seasonal closure from this month to this month based on the right sizing activities that we conducted. Okay, aside from EAFM rollout, aside from right sizing, also do networking of marine protected areas. Marine protected areas are very key in CRM work, but we've brought it up a little to another level by establishing networks of these MPAs through the UP Marine Science Institute, which applied systematic conservation planning. So SCP is actually makes a lot of use of remote sensing and ecological mapping, and a lot again of engagement with stakeholders to come up with the proper network, proper identification of areas where you can further establish MPAs to maximize the effect of increased fish and better corals or better seagrass or better mangroves. So there's a science to it, and we've helped a cluster of LGUs in northern Iloilo. For those of you who are familiar with Iloilo, we've worked with partners from Barotac Nuevo all the way up to Estancia. Estancia's IUU Fishing Index and Threat Assessment Tool. What is IUU? It's illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Illegal fishing is something like dynamite fishing. It's not allowed by law. Unreported are the people who go, under the radar, don't get detected at all that they're fishing. And unregulating are the fishers that do not register themselves. So it's like, again, they're not part of the data gathering because you can't manage what you don't know. So did we come up with the tool? IUU fishing was actually the very basis for the refinement or amendment of the fisheries code. A lot of IUU fishing was happening and still is happening in the Philippines. And so we came up with a tool to measure or assess the status and track the progress towards preventing, deterring, and eliminating IUUF in the Philippines. So we work a lot with local government units here, and the Bureau of Fisheries is currently, they adopted the tool and they're currently rolling it out on a national level. So the creator of the tool was actually created by a lawyer and a scientist, a lawyer who had a strong background in enforcement and a scientist who liked to tinker with data. So they came up with a tool. It looks at the prevalence, the vulnerability, and I forgot what the exposure of certain LGUs to illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing. So there are a lot of facets to it, but basically, the bottom line for the iFit tool is the more we know about the problem, the better we can solve it. So the iFit is actually searchable. You just type in iFit in Google, and you can learn more about the tool and how it's being used. So the goal is to have it implemented nationally. So there are different levels of coming up with iFit results. At the municipal level, you can merge these at the provincial or regional level so that different strategies can be identified by law enforcers and fisheries managers to better regulate or deter IUU fishing in our waters. Talk with you as a group kasi ang responsible seafood sourcing really has a lot of private sector engagement. Okay? Responsible seafood sourcing was not on our minds when we started Fish Right. It evolved as we were working for livelihood. It evolved into a concept, and now it's a movement nationally. I think you had with you Saz of Tindagat before. Julius shared with me that Saz was also one of your speakers, and he is a partner under the RSS movement. And he's an active partner. In fact, I'll be seeing him in Iloilo this week. He'll be joining us for a small capture fisheries forum in UPV. Okay, so the big picture in the Philippines is, again, we produce so much tons of fish worth around 276 billion pesos. That was in 2018. And the per capita fish consumption in 2017 was at 40 kilograms per year, no? Uh, an estimated 1.9 million Filipinos are directly engaged in fisheries, and about 70% of Philippine fishing grounds are considered overfished. Okay, so we lose a lot of value of around 68.5 billion pesos every year to IUU fishing. So how is this being addressed? So of course, the government, together with our local governments, have put in several regulations or checkpoints on our fishing, but these are mostly output and input based. So when you say output, is regulations on what you get out from the sea or what you get out from fishing, and input regulations are more on what you put in the sea so that you can get these fish. So it's the licenses, the technical restrictions, etc. But we found that there has to be more than this to be able to address these dilemmas or these problems with our Philippine fisheries. So it was discovered through our SFP partners, who are now called the Bluer Seas Philippines, that supply chains too can be a point of entry to manage fisheries. They're not isolated. It's not just the fisher that should be engaged in responsible seafood sourcing or EAFM for that matter, but it's the entire supply chain. So how do we do it? So first, we enable access to information. both at the supply level and the market. We don't just talk to fishers, we also talk to buyers, to the traders, to intermediaries, and even to the end markets. So it's across the supply chain. At the fishers side, we strengthen fishing organizations. We improve post-harvest capacities. Well, we don't do it directly, but we facilitate the network to be able to do these things. And we catalyze access to preferential markets. On the market side, we catalyze sustainable purchasing commitments. A lot of the market members don't know about the predicament we have with our fisheries. They don't know that if you catch a certain size of fish, that's already called overfishing. So there's a lot of educating the market side of the supply chain, and we ensure compliance to fisheries laws in supply chains, improve business systems, and support transparency and accountability. Okay. We increase awareness and adoption of responsible seafood sourcing standard. I'll be sharing that with you in a while. But ultimately, with this supply chain in mind, we improve the fishers' productivity, increase income and food security, disincentivize unsustainable practices. So we definitely do not promote unsustainable fishing practices, and generate demand and support for seafood sustainability. So it's a growing movement. So what is responsible seafood sourcing? It's actually a strategy. We engage industry to support in actions for sustainable fisheries management through public commitments, and we develop corporate level policies. So we have a group there, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, they're called Fishta, and they've committed, it's in their internal policy. They've committed to sustainable fisheries management when they procure their seafood. And it's also a tool. RSS is also a tool. And our group has come up with the RSS standard, which has a set of criteria and indicators, as you can see on in the illustration, that help define responsibly sourced seafood. So it is designed to assess supply chain practices from the fishing to the sourcing and to the trading of seafood. Okay, so what is the standard? It lists criteria that can call you responsibly sourced seafood and designed to assess supply chain practices. So it's only for the Philippine domestic Marine Stewardship Council. That is a higher level. That's really sustainable. What we use for now is the term responsible, because getting to that sustainable level is still a long way to go. But getting people on board responsible seafood sourcing is more doable and more practical for the Philippine setting. So it espouses voluntary self-regulation of companies to benchmark against a set of best practices that were agreed between private sector, public sector, and the civil society organizations. And these are like the fishers and the organizations or NGOs that assist those fishers. Okay, it uses market influence to reinforce and incentivize responsible fishing, sourcing, and trading practices. So it overall improves fisheries management. Okay, so there are major 4 criteria that we look at when it comes to the standard. No, we look at your legal compliance, the traceability of the fish you catch, the sustainability commitments that you've had, and the human and social welfare. Okay, so for producers, we have different criteria for different, depends on where you are in the supply chain. If you're a producer, you have different criteria. If you're a community consolidator or integrator, if you're a small-scale buyer and processor, institutional distributor, and even end buyer, like those hotel, restaurants, and caterers. Okay, so this is an example of a matrix, no? What we look at. We have a criteria, we have certain sets of indicators, of course, and we look at these indicators to confirm or verify if you are indeed compliant, depending on where you are in the supply chain. If you're a fisher, consolidator, or even an end buyer. Okay, so how does it work? You fill out the self-assessment form on your own, but you have to be sure to provide your means of verifications or documentation. And then the Bluer Seas group, the group that works on RSS under Fish Right, analyzes the scores and verifies the data. And then you get a rating at the end of your assessment. 0 is lowest, 3 is the best. And based on your rating, you get an RSS result or recommendation. So if you get needs improvement, RSS will also help you find ways to improve if you're very committed to the work, no? From improved to acceptable to good option. So the weight of what we look at in Fisher Folk is really mostly the legal compliance, because that's a good start to knowing that your fisheries is sustainable. And then we also look at traceability. We're working on the tools or criteria for sustainability commitments and even human and social welfare. So this is what the report looks like. You have certain parts that you pay close attention to, criteria. So what is it in it for supply chain stakeholders, no? It increases supply chain visibility. It gains access to new buyers and better markets. We've seen that happen for a lot of our fisher folk partners in the sites where we work in. It improves traceability. So a lot of the buyers from the fish are really they appreciate the traceability, and I'm sure this is ultimately for the consumer, no? How many of you have gone to a supermarket, looked at fish in the frozen section, looked at the back and not know where that fish actually came from? No, so knowing where your fish come from and knowing that they're responsibly caught helps a lot with the end market. So it also increases access to financial tools and information, and it augments income and sustain livelihood over time. So for the buyers and markets, you get good reputation. You're given a star because you are engaged in responsibly sourced seafood. There's consumer trust and confidence. If you see a certain brand like Fishta or Tindagat, you know that the fish you are catching is responsibly sourced. You are assured of supply, and this in turn increases sales and brand value and even improves transparency. Okay, so currently, our RSS has a multitude of partners. So we work with different NGOs, government agencies, of course, and a lot of the private sector. So later this month, on October 22, there is a tie-up. There's a partnership between Sea Trace International, which is one of our partners, and the Marriott. They will be holding an event to showcase again RSS work, Marriott in Manila. No? So you might know some of the people who work with the groups that are flashed on the screen. If you meet them, you can learn more about the RSS work that they're engaged in. So what about government? So a lot of the role is here on the left side, no, from harvesting to processing, because a lot of the regulatory work is with the LGU, is lodged with the LGU on this side of the supply chain. Okay, so a lot of what they do is strengthen fishing organizations.
Hi,
Okay.
sorry, Ari.
Yeah, I have to
Because
hurry.
we're already at we're already at
Okay,
9:05.
okay. So I think I
Yeah.
can end already. I mean, these are just I can leave the slide with you anyway, but this is basically what we're doing. I'll just very quickly jump to the last slide because I remember what I was asked to do. So everyone has a role to play, no? But at the end, what can you do? So, there are a lot of fisheries regulations. It would be great if you learned in your area what the fisheries regulations are. If you eat, specifically, if you eat blue swimming crab or yung tinatawag po nating alimasag, or in Cebu, it's lambay. In Ilonggo, it's kasag. Please don't buy the undersized crabs because there's a scientific basis for purchasing those that are more than 4 cm in width. So if you look at a crab and look at the carapace, um,
Uh,
have this. These are eggs. They're not alligate, as some people think. These are the eggs of a crab, female crab, and it is unlawful to be consuming, catching, or even possessing these kinds of eggs. And then,
Sorry. To
yes.
clarify, that's 4 inches, no, not 4 cm.
I say, sorry, 4 inches, 11 cm.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, sorry,
Okay.
sorry. Yes.
No
And
problem.
then this is, I don't know, locally here in Negros, it's called lobo lobo. Some people say, no, it's like dolong. They say, no, they don't grow big, but they actually do. And these are caught using fine meshed gear, fine meshed nets. Yung maliliit po, pino ang mata ng net. And they are most likely catching other juvenile fish. So if you know, biologically, if you catch a lot of the juveniles, you don't give them a chance to reproduce. And then you are lessening the potential of your fishery stocks to grow. So know these and get involved, bottom line. So
All
maraming salamat.
right. Thank you so much for your
Very
presentation.
long talk.
No, I can see how it's truly difficult to get to any sort of consensus along what was it? What the Philippines has one of the longest coastlines in the world, diba?
Yes.
It's yeah, something like I forget which
30,
what position we occupy in the world and in the international
I think
stage,
it's
but
like
we
the
do have like
second longest coastline.
yeah, okay.
Uh-oh. Third or
Um
second.
yeah, yeah, just because of the sheer number of islands that we have to we
Mm-hmm.
have to manage. Unfortunately, this is all the time that you have for free. If you are joining us online, watching our social media uploads on YouTube or 2 weeks later, I'm sorry, this is what you can get for free. For the rest of our audience, please stay on for our informal session. We will be moving on to the discussion after this. But for now, let us first give our greatest appreciation. Uh, let's flash our certificate of appreciation online for everyone to see. Can we do that first? So the Agribusiness and Countryside Development Foundation, in partnership with the Management Association of the Philippines, together with all our members, our special partner institutions, senior special partner institutions, corporate members, and individual members, all present this certificate of appreciation to Andrea Leonor Ari, Barcelona, for her invaluable support in the advocacy and promotion of agribusiness and countryside development, and for her commendable and unselfish services rendered to this foundation as our resource speaker given on our 23rd online meeting of 2024, this 15th day of October in Pasig City, Philippines, signed by Ernesto Ordonez, our chairman, and myself as our president. Business and Countryside Development Foundation is a nonprofit member-supported organization, and it is only through your generosity that we're able to bring you these sessions every 2 weeks. If you are working in the realm of sustainable fishing, you're an academic, a researcher that's trying to understand, identify, best practices. If you're working for governments, whether it be here in the Philippines or in other countries, and you're interested in understanding how this works, or you're just interested in aquaculture and sustainable fishing in general, leave us a comment down below. You can ask your questions for our speaker. We'll try to get it to her as soon as we can. You can share your experiences as well. Is it a little different where you're from? Are there other policies that you'd like to discuss? Or are there things that you picked up from today's presentation that you'd like to discuss a little bit more with us? We'd be very, very happy to hear from you. And we'd be very glad to have you on as a member. Again, it is only through your generosity we can do what we do. Send us an email, introduce yourselves, and let's say hello. But unfortunately, again, this is the end. This is the extent of what you can get for free. So we'll see you in our next session. Keep posted. We'll post about it soon. And yeah, have a great day. Bye bye.